Well, the video didn't play this week, but it is what it is. You just never know. Sometimes computers, as like I always say, they just like to screw with me. So this is the Buckeye remix. It's about the Ohio State 45 to 12 victory over Arkansas State. Special remix today. I've got a co-host, which I don't always have. So I'm gonna let him have a lot of the fun today because I get to do this every week. So I've got Mo Murphy with me from Up in Flames, and maybe number one Ohio State fan. What do you think, Mo?
I wouldn't say I'm the biggest. I don't know. I used to think that prior to meeting like you and Jay, I used to think like me and my dad were the biggest Ohio State fans. Even with all my family being in Columbus, I'm like, I will die for Ohio State compared to them. But then I met you and Jay, and I'm like, oh, I might not be the biggest fan like I thought I was. I might have met somebody who can outdo me with our fandom.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've just been a fan longer. So like,
yeah,
it's fun. Like you younger guys, like we just had a conversation that we've been having about Ohio State for 20 years. And it's like seeing the younger guys like become the jaded, spoiled fans that we are. And I mean that as a compliment. I love being a spoiled fan. Like I love having national championships like in the last 2 decades and all that. But
and I haven't had to deal with like bad times, like that 1 year with Luke Fickell when everybody was suspended. Yeah. It wasn't Luke Fickell's fault, but that was horrible to go 6-6 and then go to the Gator Bowl and lose to Florida.
Could have beat Florida.
Yeah, could have beat Florida, but we were 6-6. Like that's if you ever point that like what was the roughest year, like that was it. Like that was bad football to watch. Outside of that, it's national championship possibilities pretty much every year.
And that's what the remix is about, as standard. So I'll go through the overview here, and then we'll get into the grade card. So Ohio State, like I said, won 45 to 12. They yards was 438 to 276 or 538. I apologize. 370 passing yards, 168 rushing yards for the Buckeyes. 10 yards per play, I think, is the number that stands out as just like it was a scrimmage out there. Third down efficiency, not great. Only 5 for 11 for the Buckeyes. So that's one I circled on there. Total plays. I'm gonna get into this a little bit because I have this discussion a lot with Buckeye fans, and it's one of my huge pet peeves with I shouldn't call it a pet peeve. It's a sticking point with me with modern football, and it's nobody's fault. So total plays, 54 to Buckeyes, 76 to the Red Wolves, and the Red Wolves only scored the 4 field goals. They ran 76 more plays, and time of possession 37 minutes and 44 seconds for the Red Wolves, only 22 minutes and 16 seconds for the Buckeyes. And this is an argument I have, not an argument, a discussion I have with a lot of Buckeye fans, kind of like what we just had, when they're like, like air it out and use what you got. What I always said last year when they were so hard on the defense, I'm like, the Ohio State defense is out there all the time. Like our Ohio State defense against Arkansas State was out there for 37 minutes because the offense was so efficient. And that's what going into the Notre Dame game last week, I said, they open it up. You just keep putting that other team back on the field. And I know it's it's a good problem to have. Right. And I thought last week they played like efficiently to like, we're not giving Notre Dame the ball all these extra times. And it worked. It gives the defense time to think, time to rest. They're not always on the field. There's nothing they could do against Arkansas State. Like our guys, like Harrison, there's nothing you can do to bring in Marvin Harrison unless you're just going to tell him to run out of bounds. Like it's going to happen, but it's one of these things that when you're these high-powered offenses, like Oklahoma's been over the years and Ohio State and stuff, that like the one thing that I would circle about this game that concerns me going forward, I know it sounds stupid, is the other team is just always on the field. Like the defense is just always out there defending. There's so many more possessions because, and I know the scoring is there, but what I'm saying is, even though, just like you said for the show, Ohio State is scoring touchdowns to their field goals, they finally get up, they're walking away. The defense still has to just keep being on the field, as to where last week the final scoring drive of the game took 7 minutes off the clock. Because they ran the ball. And I don't know. You can't really fix the problem. I think that's part of the reason, like they're really trying to, run the ball more. But we all know, like, the bread and butter of this Ohio State offense is going to be the passing game. So overall, dominant victory. It was a scrimmage. It was closer than it needed to be. Bo's about to tell you all about it. But just in general, it's these games, they still play them. They're meaningless. I feel bad for the teams like Arkansas State when I say this, but I'm tired of these games across college football. Like, we need to get better match. We only get 12 weeks of this a year. We're just wasting weeks with these matchups. You look at how much fun the other games were yesterday that we'll talk about on another show we're going to do. And then I'm like, we watched one of the better Ohio State teams that we think we've had for for a while, not for a while, but whatever, a good team. And we got to watch them play Arkansas State and then Toledo next week. Nothing against Toledo or Arkansas State, but man, I would much rather see them play BYU, Baylor, Wake Forest. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how we fix this, and I think the 12-team playoff is going to help. But I've seen, so we call them nap games. It's like, you watch a boring game, you're a little bit frustrated. Ohio State's going to walk through. Athletes are, the difference is huge, and you take a nap in the second half and get ready. So, all right, Mo, do you tell me your thoughts on the game? I'm turning the remix over to you.
So to speak on that, I like, even before the game, like, I hate these games. I really do. Like, it wasn't a typical Saturday, and we play early. Like, if we played at night, to me, like, this game should have been a night game, obviously, just for being an Ohio State fan. And I say this because I can enjoy football all day knowing that, like, okay, I'm going to watch a bad game against Arkansas State or whatever, but I get to enjoy everything else where, like, this game was not good for my mental health yesterday. Like, and I get, like, the defense has been on the field a lot more than the offense, but these games to me are Kyle McCord second halves. Like, get this game over with, be up 30-something to 0. Like, and I use this method when, like, coaching. Like, I tell the kids, like, when we're way better, then blow them out and get this game over with. Like, move on to the next game. Starters, you'll sit. The guys who don't get to play much, this is your opportunity to show me what you have. So when we move forward and we do play tougher teams, we get into conference play, I know how deep I am. I can start game planning for putting certain guys in. So that's what I look at. Like, let Kyle McCord play. Let the sixth best wide receiver on the team, he needs to be playing the whole second half. Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson should not be in the game anymore in the second half. And we didn't do that. But it also is like watching this game and then seeing how the rest of Saturday unfolded doesn't matter. I mean, it wasn't going to matter anyway, but really seeing how the 3 top 10 teams lost. Ohio State is not going to be – Georgia only won 33-0. And I'm sure, like, we'll talk about all that in the college football show, but as it pertains to the Buckeyes, the performance did not look as bad as it did.
It didn't mean anything. It was a meaningless game.
Didn't know how the rest of Saturday was going to turn out as well. And for the Buckeyes, we do know, just think about it. We get dinged for games like this more than anybody else. And I fully believe that. And it kind of upsets me. It's like, even I was talking to my dad and he was like, oh, Ohio State going to go to number 4 after this. Like, and that's the thought that Buckeye fans have because it's been proven. Like, we already dropped to 3 and then we could have dropped to 4 just because, like, they didn't beat them 66-0 like we thought they would. They didn't cover the spread. And people, I think you pointed it out as well as other people. Betting and spreads have ruined how we watch college.
Yeah, you wait till we can do a little bit here because it drastically affects how people perceive Ohio State. I'm glad you touched on it. It's driving me nuts. I have nothing against. I like sports betting. I like betting on games. I like betting on football games, but I can separate it as. Mo, you're an athlete. You've competed. I've been an athlete. I've competed. It's still you step onto the field or court or whatever, and it's still you versus them. This fake ranking number and this imaginary point spread that goes along with it is ridiculous. Because Mo, have you ever played a game and in the back of your mind was like, man, I'm playing my competitor. I hope we're up enough. No, it's literally just win the game. Like, it's especially in college football. Like, you got people that tell me, oh, we only need 4 teams in the playoffs. Nobody's good enough and all these things. And I'm like, well, then quit judging them based on how big they win. It's if you're telling me it's only about the loss column, which I know everybody at Off the Ball Network's tired of hearing me say it. College football is still about the loss column. At the end of the year, it's still about the loss column. Now, once everybody has the same loss, then you can start telling me, but a win over Arkansas State by 1 point is better than any loss.
Yeah,
So it frustrates me that has such an effect. But again, I'll reel it back in and say that's just perception. Ryan Day doesn't give a shit about the point spread. Knowles doesn't give a shit about the point spread. They It's more like an NFL preseason game. They know what they're looking at. They know what they're trying to accomplish. Now, I think they accomplished it yesterday? No, I think Knowles took a step back. We'll talk about it on the grade cards here. When I say step back, I mean it wasn't as good as last week. But the bottom line is they're looking at things and evaluating things and working on things in these games. They are not concerned about the point spread. Most of the big spreads didn't get met yesterday, but that doesn't mean a team played bad. So I'm glad you let me go on that rant. It's so bad right now
because it's how you judge Ohio State. Like, it has everything to do with Ohio State, because 44.5 point favorites, like, we expect you to cover. And so going into the game, like, you expect Ohio State to win huge. Like, 45-12 is a blowout, but you expect them to win 60 something to 17 or something. Like, so when going into the game, like, non-Buckeye fans have this expectation that, like, oh, y'all are supposed to handle business.
Well, and people don't watch the game either. They look at the score at the bottom of the screen. That is all they. If you watch that game yesterday,
only Buckeye fans watch that game yesterday.
I'll just ask you, if these two teams played honestly 100 times outside of like a natural disaster, is there any way Arkansas State could win?
No, I think you know what's crazy is I think Arkansas State probably played their best game that they could have played against a team like Ohio State and still lost 45-12. Like, I think that's the best performance you get from Arkansas State, to be honest.
Buckeyes only had 20 first downs. They had, they have 6 touchdowns. I mean,
it was big play or bust, basically,
Ohio
State yesterday.
At any point, they could have said, all right, let's just pick one of the receivers and we can have 500. Like, it was not a game. Like, physically, it was not a game. So, like, did the Buckeyes play perfectly? No. But my point is, we talk about these point spreads. It was still dominant. Like, these teams weren't even close to each other yesterday.
Yeah, like, even I told you, like, for my mental health, like, this wasn't good. But everybody I was talking to who aren't Ohio State fans, who weren't watching the game, is like, bro, chill. Y'all are gonna blow them out. Like, who cares? Like, everybody's watching the Alabama-Texas game at the same time that this game is going on, and Ohio State's on TV. I don't care who's playing. It could have been Alabama versus Georgia for the national championship, but Ohio State's on, so that game gets precedent. And so I'm watching, and I'm like, bro, who cares? Like, y'all are going to blow them out. Like, what are you tripping for? And I'm just like, because I just feel like there's something missing. And even our defense, we didn't miss tackles yesterday, which is something that we did all last year. But it was if I point out our defense, secondary was the problem.
It was sloppy yesterday.
It's been the problem for 2 weeks in a row now, because think about it. The 2 players we've benched in the past 2 weeks were players in the secondary. Knowles benched Josh Proctor last week against Notre Dame, which I absolutely love that he does that. But he benched Proctor last week, and we benched Denzel Burke twice yesterday. Like, you get benched, you get talked to, you don't go back in for a couple series, and the expectation is that you play better. You go back in there, you play the exact same way that got you benched, and guess what? You ended up on the bench for the rest of the game. If anybody loves that, I love it. Like, the defense is held accountable.
Accountability, finally.
You're done. Like, okay, you're done for the day. And you seen Proctor, and I'll say, here's how I know the benching works. Proctor played amazing yesterday. He didn't miss a single tackle. He didn't, like, how he could have played for himself individually. He had a great individual performance, and I feel like it has everything to do with getting benched against Notre Dame. Like, I won't make that same mistake twice, because if you get benched again, you might not start or might not play for the rest of the year. Like, I think Knowles is one of those guys. Like, I'm fascinated to see next week against Toledo if Denzel Burke starts next week. Like, something tells me Denzel Burke might not be the starting corner next week. When you get benched twice for a coach that's holding you accountable, it's hard for me to say that he's gonna be the starter. Like, so I'm fascinated to see it, and that's what I love about Ohio State and Jim Knowles right now, is the simple fact that he's benching guys if they're not playing well. It doesn't matter who they play.
Yeah, I would say, one thing, the way I grade, I apologize for my voice today. I don't know what's going on. A lot of yelling, screaming at the TV yesterday, but one thing I noticed about the defense, I like what the defense did, but this is something that, I brought up to you when we were talking about it yesterday, is like, I know I know all this stuff sounds fake, but it's not. When you're Ohio State and your defense is built to be, to play in the playoffs and to play the best teams in the country, and you're looking at what, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, and everybody does. When you play an opponent like Arkansas State, and their players don't look like that, their players aren't built like yours. That's why a lot of these teams have trouble with that, because it sounds stupid, but like, you're preparing to go up against a certain type of team, and these kind of like, I don't know, it's just size wise and everything's different, the scheme's different, it throws you off a little. So I thought, like, for instance, we can talk about the penalties real quick early in the game. Those aren't penalties that are called in a real game. I'm just saying, like, they are not calling those penalties against Burke, against Clemson. They're not calling Clemson, like, you watch that Alabama Texas game. Texas is getting credit for being tough defense. It was the same thing, but when it's a lesser opponent, that we like, the team always gets called for it, and
Yeah, you give them an opportunity.
it's exactly, you're like, it's and I hate when they call the game that way, like they were calling it like so ticky tack. I'm like, you wouldn't call this way, against Michigan or any other team in the conference, but you're calling it. And so that throws your defense off. Like, it's hard to like draw it back when you're Jim Knowles, because his other option is to sack that kid 30 times. Like, I'm sure if he wanted to, he could have just blitzed every down. He probably would have gave up 2 touchdowns, but he probably would have put their quarterback in the hospital. Like, these are things that, like, it is tough to learn anything. Now, I graded the defense at more like a C or C plus yesterday, only because I thought there should have been a little more ball hawking, a little more. I thought our players should have been around the ball more on defense. I wasn't happy with the amount of sacks. I expected, like you said, with the offense, I wanted to see with the defense. I wanted to see the first 2 quarters, this defense just go nuts.
So tough on them. You are so tough.
I am. I like, no, I liked how they played, but I wanted to see, like, I wanted your quarterback to be scared to be out there. I wanted, like it was last week against Notre Dame. That kid was, which we found out how. We'll get on the college football show. I think we found out a lot about Notre Dame yesterday, but last week that kid was like confused and shell shocked. Kid from Arkansas State played way better. Full credit to Arkansas State. I think they played a good game. I really do. I think they didn't play it safe. They really, really, really were trying to get down the field. They took the points when they could get them. They didn't waste field goals in case something crazy happened. I thought Arkansas played a good game by their standards. I don't think they have anything to be disappointed in. But still, the defense is better because they didn't give up these. Like last year, they would have gave up 2 long touchdowns in this, like just some crazy, like,
because they missed tackles.
They would have missed tackles. So
that was a huge problem last year. That even watching this game, that's where I'm like, okay, even a play of 20 yards, like 20 yards didn't turn to 25 yards. Why? Because at the 20-yard, okay, you gave up a 20-yard play, but you brought them down. And so that was something, like, I would say for me, the defense, the grade I give them is like a B minus. So a little, because I just still felt like, when watching them, like, not missing tackles, not giving up bigger plays, like 20 yards turned to 30 yards, even though, like, okay, we shouldn't have gave up 20-yard plays, but still, like, those 20 didn't turn to 30. And that's what would have been the problem last year. And so I think with me measuring Ohio State this year in defense, everything we do, I'm comparing to last year, because last year was probably one of the worst defenses.
Last year, I would have gave the defense an A on this game. I honestly would have, because I would have been grading them on a curve.
Played so, like, and so I think this year we're comparing. Our defense is really good, and I think we're comparing them to last year, which is how you got to do it, because last year was one of the worst defenses I think I've seen in Ohio State. One of the worst defenses in my lifetime. There were a lot of holes and a lot of problems, and talent wasn't the reason why. It was just mistake after mistake, missed tackle here, missed tackle there. You didn't intercept the ball when you should have, dropped interceptions, all this stuff. So when I look at Ohio State this week, I give them like a B minus. They didn't give up too many big plays. Denzel Burke, it goes back to Denzel Burke played horrible, and he was held accountable for it twice and got benched twice. And I think Jim Knowles could have probably called a different game and really put the punishment on Arkansas State. But I feel like Jim Knowles, I feel like as a coach, you play a little conservative, and we played like that both sides of the ball. But even defense is like, let's not try and get 30 sacks and 5 interceptions. Like, let's just get out of here. I don't want to get nobody hurt trying to make big plays and look good on the stat sheet. Like, we know when it comes down to it, we're going to make the stop. And every big Arkansas State play, we held them to a field goal at the end of the day. They only kicked 4 field goals.
Absolutely.
So I feel like it's like, okay, we gave up enough big plays. Let's buckle down. Let's play defense and only give up a field goal. If we could walk away from every drive where it looks like they could score and gave up a field goal, then it's a win for us. And I think that's how Jim Knowles called the game. And ultimately, like, that's kind of what happened with our defense. I give them a B-, only because I was a little more satisfied with how they played, but I also thought they still would play a lot better because of the way we played against Notre Dame. Like, measuring how they played great against Notre Dame,
Well,
I expected a lavish performance against Arkansas State, and I don't think we got that.
Well, that too, and they weren't going to be allowed to be as physical, and I think the penalties really slowed down our defense. I think if they don't call those early ones, I think it gets out of hand. I think our defense puts up an awesome game. I think it's the game that I thought I was going to see. And I think Knowles did the same thing I did after there's a couple of BS, pass interference calls. They were like, all right, let's dial it back, keep them in front of us. And just like you said, let's get out of here. Because they're obviously not going to let us, be physical in the secondary.
Going on that drive, though, and because I know exactly what drive you're talking about, the 2 pass, we gave up 45 yards in penalties. Like, they were in field goal range solely based off of penalties.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible.
We had the jumping over the punt shield. I've never heard that called, by the way. I didn't know that was – I'm going to be honest. Like, as much as I'm in the – I've never heard that called. So, when he was like, jumping over the punt shield, I was like, what? Like, that's a penalty? I didn't know that was 15 yards. 2 pass interferences on Denzel Burke, 15 yards apiece. That's 45 yards on a drive and penalties.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm holding that against them. I'm not saying whether it was deserved or whatever, but I still hold it against them because – if that's Alabama, that might be your game. Like, I still hold the little mistakes against you, whether it's the ref's fault or not. So that's probably where our difference is on, like, I mean, I'm at C+, you're at B-. We're talking about
it's not much of a difference, but it's I'm not as dissatisfied with the defense. But even still, like I said, the first drive, I'm on the phone because my dad, he was driving. So he was upset that he couldn't watch the game. But he's like, it's against Arkansas State. And I'm calling him. I'm like, we just gave up 45 yards in penalties. They started on the 35 and end up inside the 20 off of penalties. Like, that's something that I'm not concerned about it moving forward against good teams. I don't think we make those mistakes, but
I just don't think they call it. I don't think they call it.
And in that is like, and then the one pass interference that Denzel Burke had, that receiver made an amazing catch. I was like, wow, he caught that on top of, I think the first one wasn't a pass interference. I think the second one was because he jumped up, didn't look back. You know how the rule is with pass interference.
Oh, they're going to call that every day of the week.
And he jumped up, and the dude still made the catch. And I was like, well, that's a heck of a catch by a wide receiver. I'm going to give credit. I'm not just going to poop on a team like Arkansas State. Had that been Wisconsin, I'd be like, screw that dude. But it's Arkansas State. Like, I appreciate the good plays, but 45 yards on a drive and penalties on defense, never good. I don't care who you play because, like you said, against a bad team, that's okay for the simple fact, we're just more talented. Against a good team, you lose that game because of one drive like that. You put a team who's close to you, maybe not as good as you, but you give them 45 yards of penalties to score on the drive and get their momentum going. Like, that's the difference between a win or a loss. Like, that's the difference between having to play a tight game or playing a blowout. So, but against Arkansas State, it's okay. We just were more talented.
And that's one of those that I'm talking like too, like that you take that drive. That drive was all Ohio State's fault. They were getting the ball. If you take the 3 points off the board, it's going to be another touchdown for Ohio State. And now we're looking at a 52-9 game. Like, that's how that's the differences when people want to talk about, the point differential and stuff. That's where it comes into play. Overall, it's fine. The game's over. I don't know. It was fun. It was fun. I think we're both going to say the offense is like A. I don't even know how you want to break. Like,
I mean,
what else could they do?
They didn't play bad. Like, they played good. Like, they played really good. I would say, I'll give them an A, A-, A+. I don't care. Like, they played good. Marvin Harrison Jr. played outstanding.
I thought Stroud. Okay, I brought this up to you. Here was my number one takeaway from the offensive part of the game. Then I'll get yours. I didn't care about anything else. I thought Stroud's footwork and his mechanics in the pocket looked awesome yesterday. Like every time they would show the slow motion of him throwing the ball, he really looks like a guy who is focused on the art of quarterback. I just his hips, his footwork, everything, his angles, and that's repeatable. That's stuff that gets you through a season because it's
Mhm.
muscle memory. So my main takeaway was like Stroud looked awesome in the pocket. I mean I know what the guys that get the ball are going to look like. I think Henderson looks a little stiff. I don't think I'm as high on Henderson as everybody else. I'm not coming to bang on him.
I told you
There's
what I
something
said
there's
about him.
something tight about him when he's running, but that being said, he's having a good season. It's going to come. Like he's gonna loosen up. He's gonna get banged around this year. I think that's part of the reason they're kind of forcing the running game right now because they know that they don't want to go to Michigan again in the snow and not have a running
Mhm.
game. So they got to work on the offensive line and all that. I hope that's the plan. But that being said, Henderson's fine, but he is not. I don't think. I'll just say this real quick. I don't think it's close right now between him and Robinson down in Texas. I don't. They try to compare the two
No.
all summer. I don't think that Henderson is near the level of what Robinson is
And
right
we
now.
had this conversation yesterday where I told you I think Mayan Williams is probably our best running back because I think he's our 3 down back. And I think Henderson is big player bust to me. Like,
Yeah.
if he doesn't have a big run, he's not going to turn, to me, he's not going to turn a 2 yard run into a 6 yard run. Where for 2 weeks in a row, Mayan Williams has done that. Like,
Yeah.
he's turned a 2 yard run into a 6 yard run. Even the play where he only got 2 yards, he was supposed to lose like 4 yards, got hit 4 different times. And because he got those 2 yards and went out of bounds, it was a late hit, penalty thrown. And after all that, Mayan Williams still didn't touch the ground. Like,
Yeah.
and he came out of that play and flexed his muscles for the simple fact he knew like only a big dog
Yeah. I
hit the ground after a late hit. Only a big dog does not hit the ground. And so I think Mayan Williams is I don't want to say our best running back. Henderson's probably better as far as skill, but Mayan Williams is just a
but
dog. Like,
it's so crazy.
on 3rd and 2. I give him the ball.
I
He's
know.
going to get that first
But
down.
here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. And Ohio State fans are the best at this. We're always like we always we with some every year like we pick a guy that's not the other guy, and I think the same thing. And then I look at the stats. Henderson was 10 for 87. Williams was 8 for 46. Henderson had like it's. I know what it looks like on the field. I'm not even arguing with you about what Mayan Williams has been great, but I think the 1-2 setup they have now is working actually better than we think. I think that sometimes maybe it's because Henderson's not getting hit every time he gets the ball, so it doesn't look like he's doing what Williams does. Fact of the matter is, he's 8.7 yards a carry yesterday and 2 touchdowns. Like that
He's a
happened.
big play guy. Like that's
That's
what I mean
fine.
with Henderson is.
I think it's fine to have both.
Yeah,
I think it's
I'm
fine to
not
have
upset.
both.
It's the perfect balance. We got a big play guy who's super talented, and then we have a guy who he's going to get it in between the tackles and take that 2 yard run into a 6 yard run.
I think
balance. I just feel like
the loss of
Ryan
Pryor.
Williams is better than.
I think the loss of Pryor is huge. I'd like to have Pryor.
And it's crazy because nobody understands like that third guy, that he catch passes out the backfield. Like he's that guy on 3rd and 3, and we put him on a swing route, and we have all the receivers, and all else fails. Like, all right, we dump it to Pryor, and he takes it for 10, 15, 20 yards. But with Henderson, it's not that Henderson's lacking talent or anything. I just feel like when he touches the ball, the expectation is a big play. And if he doesn't make a big play, like I'm not giving Henderson the ball to go in between the tackles for those 2 yards that we need on 3rd and 2. I'm giving it to Mayan Williams. So I think Henderson's the better running back. Williams is the guy that you need, that in today's football, people don't understand that you need. Like you need a guy that could turn 1 yard into 5 or 6 yards and break those tackles. So Williams, I don't think will be as appreciated because Henderson's the guy. He's the elusive back. He makes the big plays. He shakes defenders out of their socks. Mayan Williams is the guy, bro, going between the tackles. It's 3rd and 1. And next thing you know, instead of just getting that 3rd down, turning it into a 1st down, it's a 6-7 yard gain bouncing off a defender. So I think Mayan Williams is the guy who doesn't get appreciated.
Oh, I'm telling you, I will tell you right now, knowing Ohio State fans, Mayan Williams is their favorite player of the year. I know how this is going to go. It's going to be all year. Every time Henderson gets tackled short, it's going to be Williams needs to be in there. But believe me, especially the old guy mentality that's like, we need to Woody would have put
because
mine
he
like
plays that old school running
I'm
back.
not that way. I want guys out there that can score on any play. Now that I'm not saying I think Henderson is that dude, but like
I
I
think he
need
can though. I think he is that. He is the guy
I
who can score on
and
any
I'm good
play.
with that because and
Just
I'm at the point to where like when it comes to it, like this team could just throw the ball around the field. Like they don't really they're going to need the running game, but I think they're the least dependent on it, until the weather breaks.
yeah, because we like, and that's why I say we could have just slung the ball around
Oh,
the
he could have.
field.
Stroud could have done whatever he wanted to that team.
And
Could have done
Emeka
whatever he wanted
Egbuka
to.
is he's Smith Najigba this year. What Smith Najigba was last year
Yeah,
to the Ohio State team. Like we
he's
know Smith
really coming
Najigba
along
is the
great.
guy. Like we know Marvin Harrison Jr. And so who's that third guy? And it's Emeka Egbuka. Like he's the third guy who he could end up having more. Well, obviously Smith Najigba hurt now and not playing or whatever, but he could be the guy where you're like, he's probably your third best receiver, but we expect him
Bro,
to take for next year.
we
And
got
he
two
has
NFL receivers on the bench right now that aren't even playing
two
yet.
NFL receivers, and
I
then we
think
got
I
two
think
more. I think Fleming's an NFL.
it's close.
I just don't know if Fleming is an NFL receiver at Ohio State because he's probably our fourth best receiver.
Right.
Like we have Smith Najigba on the bench. We have Egbuka, who I think is an NFL receiver, and then we have Marvin Harrison Jr., who put it on display yesterday.
Yeah.
He had a Rose Bowl game yesterday against Arkansas State. He is different, and he's
very happy with him.
Which is another thing. He's not the same type of receiver his dad was. So that's it's even good. He's his modern day dad. If Marvin Harrison Sr. played in today's NFL, he would be what his son is now. Yeah. Marvin Harrison Jr. played where being a possession receiver and a great route runner and getting those 10 to 12 yards and eventually getting a touchdown. Marvin Harrison Sr. was one of the greatest receivers in the game that just doesn't get the love he deserves, but he was a possession receiver, wasn't necessarily the fastest, but he did everything you needed a great receiver to do. And I think if you would have translated him to today's NFL or today's football, you have his son. Like he literally
his son's big. His son's bigger and faster. Actually, you know what? I would compare him. Before we get out, like I would compare Harrison Jr. to I would compare him to his dad's teammate Reggie Wayne. That's who he reminds me more of Reggie Wayne with the size speed combination but the ability to really run the routes. It's not all about going over the top. He's got it all, man. He's got it all. It was fun to see.
He's different. I ain't gonna lie. Like seeing him have a great game and seeing Emeka Egbuka, and I told I was on the phone with my dad, and I'm like, we use Emeka Egbuka like Kansas City uses Tyreek Hill, like or like San Francisco used Deebo Samuel, like he'll run the reverses. He's the athlete on the field. Like he is the guy, like he's the big play guy. We run reverses. We give him a screen pass and let him take it to the house. He's our punt returner. Outside of that block in the back, which I don't think should have been called, but the dude also jumped over the punt shield. So what Emeka Egbuka taking that punt return is like, bro, he's our athlete. Like he's our do everything kind of guy. He's not our best receiver. Smith Najigba is, but he's our do everything guy. Like we're going to send Smith Najigba to just be a great receiver, where Egbuka is like, we're going to put you in, you're a great athlete. We're just going to put you in the best position, whether it's punt return, kick return, reverses,
we just want you on the field.
Yeah, that's on the field because you can do everything.
He's what like the Tressel guys and the Urban Meyer guys were like, they're like, you're a football player. You need to be on the field. Another guy, shout out to Xavier Johnson, another solid game, special teams, and one other dude. We got a big shout out to Cade Stover. Huge catch. He had 2 catches for 40 yards, but they had the one big one up the sideline. But it looked
made like he got an extra 10 yards
yeah,
when
it looked good. He looked like part of the offense. Like I say, as far as it being a scrimmage, and they had basically Ohio State got to pick yesterday what they did on offense because they knew that like every third time they touched the ball. This was Justin Fields. I remember in 2019 had this same issue. Ohio State scored. So like every time they got the ball, like Justin Fields only got to throw the ball like 3 times a drive because that third one was going to be a touchdown. Yeah, that was what it was yesterday. Like
that was 13 for 18 for 300 and something yards. Like
it was crazy. So it's like you can only work on so much when you only get so many plays. Now,
yeah,
as far as like I already talked about, like, is that negative in the long run? There's nothing you can do about it unless you force the run game. But then when you force the run game, the other teams, like we know Ohio State is practicing the run. So they sell out for the run because here's what they're not going to do against Arkansas State. They are not going to show run on first or second down and pull it in and throw over the top against Arkansas State. That's what you were talking about before the show
Yeah.
of like it was so predictable. Arkansas State knows that like Ohio State's not going to play action here. They're working on their run game. So they sell out a little more as to where if you're playing, a different team, you better not get too close to the line of scrimmage as to where that's why I say when you play these games, it's not quite easy to evaluate. So all right, Mo, we went a little long, but that was awesome. I appreciate you coming on. I love to, like, whether it's you or Jay, I love to have another Ohio State fan to bounce these thoughts off of.
Mhm.
Overall, I think it was a solid victory. They got to work on some things. Toledo will be a notch above. Toledo's playing pretty good this year. A lot of people have said Toledo's the best team that Ohio State's played so far. We'll talk about that in the college football show. So everybody check that out too. This is live college football show. If you're listening to this now, it'll be next on the feed, on the podcast feed at Jeff Need Sports. And you'll also be able to find that live on YouTube at Off the Ball Network. Please like and subscribe that. Me and Mo are on there all the time. We appreciate it. All the other guys are doing awesome work. Unfortunately, we missed an awesome spaces. They were holding it down Twitter. So subscribe, on Twitter to the Off the Ball Network page. They guys are doing a lot of awesome, like they do betting shows. We'll do some football shows, a lot of spaces going on. So we appreciate that. And of course, go subscribe to Up in Flames too. Anywhere, any podcast platform you want to listen to that on. Mo does some awesome work on there. Always brings the energy, always brings I would say a unique but a necessary outlook to these games. A lot of times I don't see something that he does, and then I'm listening to him and I'm like, damn, like he's right. Like he said some stuff before this show that I'm like, that's a great point. So it's not just cookie cutter stuff. Like Mo always brings his own energy and his own take on everything. So Mo Murphy, thanks for being on the show, man. It's been a blast. I hope you can come back again this season.
Mhm.
Hope they're all victory. Hope they're all victory conversations.
I'm not coming on a loss, Jeff. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
I appreciate it. It's tough. It's tough. I had to do Locked On Buckeyes last year after the Michigan game, and that was one of the hardest moments of my career so far. But Jay's a pro. I'm a pro. We got through it together, man. So again, I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody out there that listens, watch, likes, reviews, anything you can do for Jeff Needs Sports. We're out of here, and go Bucks.